Welcome to Cellmates, a bi-weekly podcast where yeah, that's right. I'm letting people know how often this show comes out, just in case they can't figure it out. Bi-weekly meaning once every 2 weeks.
Because that word has two meanings.
It has two meanings.
Defeats the purpose of there being a word for it.
We're the bi-weekly that also kind of is bi-monthly.
Yeah, if that only...
Like, we're kind of twice a month and once every 2 weeks.
Words are hard. Anyway.
Hold on. The epic fortnight, we've released every fortnight.
Oh, we do release every fortnight.
That's right. Kids are into Fortnite these days.
That is true. You can't see us dancing, but we're doing all of that.
I'm doing the floss.
Dick Ward, this is a podcast.
Wait, hold on. Let me start it. This is a podcast where we talk about two movies. We take like two movies and we like throw a Venn diagram over them, or we throw them into Venn diagrams and compare and contrast and say like what these two movies got in common likes. These movies are usually Disney.
But not always.
They're usually musicals.
Not always.
And usually good.
Not always.
And Kate Phillips, how are you today?
I am doing well.
Where would you say our movies fall in the good musical Disney categories?
Well, I would say we'll get there.
It's complicated, right?
But I would say they are small in stature, but big in courage. That's a theme?
Like,
anyway,
like Eazy-E.
Happy month. Happy Mouse Month, everyone.
Happy Mouse Month.
Happy Mouse Month.
As we know, it's Mouse March.
Mouse August.
Mouse August. All right.
So that doesn't work.
Mouse Month is, Kate.
A week or two ago, Dick asks me, "Hey, Kate, you want to do a Mouse Month?" And I laughed in his face.
And you said no.
I said no.
And then we did it.
And then there were just too many. There are so many mouse movies.
Yeah.
Specifically from one decade of animation.
Yeah, like
full-length mouse movies.
Like there was a time.
You think of mice in animation, you think Mickey, right?
Sometimes,
but
yeah.
Mickey doesn't.
I think of Danger Mouse.
Of movies?
You said animation.
I said animation.
I don't think about Disney.
You think
or
Danger
Mickey
Mouse?
Movies. I think Danger Mouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and Mole Rocca.
That's weird.
Or Morocco Mole.
Anyway,
whatever.
It all started with a mouse.
It all started with a mouse.
According to Walt. But like,
or I guess a rabbit, though.
Mickey,
right?
Yeah, but he lost rights to the... Yeah, Mickey doesn't really have a full-length movie. I guess Fantasia, but he's not... That's not...
Like, he's got a Prince and the Pauper movie from, like, the 90s.
It's like a TV movie, though, so do we count that? I don't know.
He's got...
Like, he's been in enough shorts to make a movie.
Yeah.
Like, he's been in a lot of hours of animation.
Yeah, what is the Mickey movie? Wait, is it just called the Mickey movie?
It's like Fantasia, right?
Kinda.
He's the mascot of that movie.
I mean, he's the mascot of everything.
Anyway, we're not talking about Mickey Mouse
today.
We are
not, despite all of it starting with
But the reason I gave in is because all these movies that we're talking about this month, 4 in an episode, like our Dinah 4 episode, sounded like way too many to look at one time.
And doing 4 movies at a time really, really works if some of them are not that good.
Like,
and it
some of them
matter.
you can just half watch.
Yeah.
But we had not seen any of these, so we're doing 2 this week.
Yeah. Hey, Kate, tell me what you got in your hand.
Well,
Thank you for picking it up.
Yeah.
So that sentence made sense. I know our listeners
I'll finish
couldn't
this
see
by
that,
saying it's in a total month because I don't really care about any of these movies.
Damn.
And I kind of just wanted to get it over with.
Damn.
But I will say that, Dick, we searched for a lot of these movies and we rescued 4 of the mice movies from never talking about them.
We're doing Rescuers Down Under?
That's a 5th mouse movie. Oh. We talked about that and vetoed it.
All right, so what's our drink?
This drink is called Search and Rescue.
Okay.
It is a lovely, like you described it as cran apple juice colored.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a thing we found online because we looked up mouse cocktails and all of them looked disgusting. So the 2 movies we're doing today have to do with a search for a secret community of rodents and a rescue, not of a rodent, but by rodents.
Whoa.
Boom. Today, we're discussing Venn diagramming The Rescuers.
The original Rescuers.
Not Down Under.
No Australia
Up
here.
Over. And The Secret of NIMH.
Mm-hmm.
NIMH.
NIMH. I always spell that wrong the first time or two.
Well, now
it's
that
like
you know...
it's like a USB plug. You know, you plug it in once and then you turn it over and it doesn't work, and then you turn it back over and it works.
Well, now that you know it's the National Institute of Mental Health, you might not do that.
Nope, I still try.
You wouldn't say health mental.
I do NIMH, and then I'm like, no, that's wrong. NIHM. No, that's also wrong. NIMH.
Yeah.
That's how I do.
So these are two movies from Rescuers is 1977.
Mm-hmm.
Secret of NIMH is 1982.
Mm-hmm.
There is some crossover in the humans involved, but not in the studios involved. So one reason we paired these together was Mouse Month.
Yes.
Ooh, ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, there you go.
better.
Mouse Month.
Woo! Squeak. Anyway, they both have like quests that the mice go on.
Mm-hmm.
But also,
And
Dick,
I think most interestingly,
we're talking about one of your favorite animation humans.
let's not.
No, that's true.
Is it?
More favorite than me.
I find him interesting.
And that man is
Don Bluth.
Don Bluth.
Don Bluth, who I can't say I love too many of his movies, but I really like a lot of his movies, and more than anything, I appreciate where he's like taking risks, doing things differently, going it his own way, especially during a time where Disney might not be.
Yeah, so The Rescuers was his final, like, full involvement Disney animated movie.
Yeah, because he directed the animation on Pete's Dragon,
Which is a hybrid.
Or like during this.
Yeah.
And then he did like one short.
Yeah. And he's like an uncredited animator on The Fox and the Hound, which
Right.
was 81. But after 77, he breaks off. He says, I don't like the way that Disney is cutting a lot of corners and getting away from its original, purpose and Walt's vision. I'm going to start my own animation company.
Mm-hmm.
He does, and The Secret of NIMH is the first full-length feature out of that animation company.
Yeah. And it
goes through a lot of different names, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is at this point. But
it's not a giant hit, but it gets him on the board.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's got points on the board, and people start paying attention.
yeah, I don't think it was a giant hit, but it was a hit enough, and Disney had a literal monopoly on the market.
And it was a critical hit. Mm-hmm. Like critics really, really enjoyed that, and I feel like probably just appreciated that someone else was doing quality animated movies. Yeah.
Okay, so before we talk too much about reception and opinions on the movies, let's go to the backward in time one. There's an easier way to say that. I do not have the words for that right now.
Go for it.
The older of the two.
Uh-huh. The older one, or the backwards in time
The backwards in time one. The Rescuers.
Yes.
Dick, what is your history with the movie The Rescuers?
So interesting. I know The Rescuers Down Under pretty well.
That is the sequel.
The sequel to this,
Made
right?
12 years later?
Significantly later. Which, like, we talked about these movies being made in, like, this weird period of a ton of mice movies. The Rescuers Down Under was made in, like, the early 90s when everything was Australian for some reason.
Yeah.
We were, like, obsessed. We had our Crocodile Dundees,
Yeah.
Outback Steakhouse, Yahoo Serious. Like, say what you will, Young Einstein's good.
Wait, I don't know what you're talking about.
Young Einstein?
I thought you were making a reference to Yahoo, the internet company that I
No.
didn't know. What is Yahoo Serious?
Yahoo Serious is an Australian comedian who had one Not it wasn't a hit, but I saw it as a kid and I loved it. And then it was on Comedy Central like every day for a year.
Okay.
It was called Young Einstein. It's about how a young Australian man, who is also Albert Einstein, splits the atom by inventing a way to put bubbles in beer.
Okay.
It is funnier than it should be. I'm sure it doesn't hold up.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Australia.
Nope. He did a second movie.
Not as good?
I don't know.
Well, at that point,
We have
were
no way of knowing.
We had moved on to Crocodile Hunter.
Yeah, we had moved on to like a different thing.
Some other things.
Yeah. But
So
yeah. Rescuers. I'm confident that I saw, but I don't have a strong. Just didn't have a strong memory of it. All of it very familiar to me as I was watching it, but none of it was like, oh, I know this bit. I was like, oh yeah, she goes in that hole. Okay, got it.
yeah, I had not seen this movie.
Yeah, you had not seen this at all.
No.
Right?
This, like, for some reason, it, like, didn't count
Yeah.
to me when I'm like, I've seen all the Disney movies. There's a slice of this in the middle. I feel like Sleeping Beauty to me was the last old movie, and then it picked back up with Little Mermaid.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
And for some reason, the ones in the middle didn't count in my child brain.
There's a little dip where if you ask me if I've seen every Disney movie, I'll be like, yeah, probably. And then you're like, have you seen Fox and the Hound? I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
The Great Mouse Detective,
Like,
all the way through?
Yeah. I think I've seen Fox and the Hound. I don't think I've seen Great Mouse Detective. But I saw the Billy Joel one. So, Oliver and Company.
We'll get there.
I loved it as a kid. I don't know.
Yeah, so I had no experience with it, no intention to see it. I think
Yeah.
there was a little of me that, like, by the time I could have been interested in seeing it, there was this, and the animators do talk this way, and I understand how the chronological passing of time works, but they throw Rescuers Down Under in with like, oh, we did Little Mermaid, then Rescuers Down Under, then Beauty and the Beast, then
And
Aladdin. I'm like, don't you dare put those words together.
And it's fascinating to me that you've never seen Rescuers Down Under
No.
because that was after Little Mermaid.
But I didn't see that in theaters.
Beauty
Beauty and the Beast was my first one. So
that's
had
fair,
it come
but
after
it's
Beauty and the
like-
Beast, maybe I would have seen it.
Yeah, and it's one we often ignore, and I can't wait to watch it because I
And
hope
it's
it. I
Down
hope it
Under is
holds
not a
up.
musical.
No.
Not in the sense that Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast are. No. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some like quotes from Penny that I felt like I had heard before.
Yeah.
Like I knew the character of Penny better than I thought I did.
Interesting.
So maybe I had seen it in the background at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah. This was an interesting watch because we've done some like Golden Age stuff, and obviously like the reason we started this podcast is because we're giant fans of the Renaissance. But this is an unfamiliar age of Disney to me, so it was
unfamiliar
really
territory,
fascinating to watch this for the first time.
Kate, who's doing the cookie timer on this?
I am doing the cookie timer, but you are doing the summary.
Okay, so if you're new to the podcast, we have a thing called a cookie timer, which is just a phone alarm,
It's not called a cookie timer.
but we sing the song "Cookies are done, cookies are done" to it when it
So
ends.
feel free to sing along when you hear the theme come in.
But what if I don't know the words? Just follow the bouncing ball. I know those aren't the right lyrics, but I don't know the words. I need a bouncing ball for that part.
Well,
Kate, so go ahead and set us cookie timer.
2 minutes on the cookie timer?
Yeah.
Dick, tell us about the Rescuers. Go.
Okay, so there is a Rescue Aid Society, which is a society of mice inside the United Nations. It's kind of like the Mouse United Nations. I'm sure there's a better way of putting that. They basically seem to like get letters from kidnapped children and go and rescue them. We meet Bernard, who's a janitor, and Bianca, who's the hot mouse. It's just what it is. So Bianca sees this letter from a little girl who's like, I need to be rescued. And she's like, okay, I'm going. Who's going to come with me? And all the dudes are like, yo, me. And Bernard's like, what? And she's like, Bernard, you. So Bianca and Bernard go to save this little girl. They do some like cool detective work around New York City, which is really neat. And then they figure out that she's been kidnapped by this lady named Medusa, who's trying to capture a giant diamond. This little girl, Penny, is an orphan, and she was like kind of stolen from the orphanage in the guise of like, we're going to adopt you, but I think they just steal her. Anyway, they plop her down in a hole and make her like dig around in this hole to get precious gems and this big diamond, which is like the devil's eye or something like that. Bernard and Bianca find her, attempt to rescue her. It doesn't go well, but then they have some friends that come and help, including Evinrude or Evinrude, depending on what character is saying his name, who is a dragonfly / boat motor. Some like moles or something. I don't know. Also, there's alligators. They're jerks. Eventually, they rescue Penny, get the devil's eye away from Medusa, and everybody lives happily ever after. The end. Medusa doesn't live happily.
Cookies are done. Cookies are done.
Cookies are done. Cookies are done.
Yeah, you were able to pad a little bit of that and not really miss anything.
Well, you know what I did is I've learned from my past retellings where I spend the first minute of me telling about the movie.
It's so easy.
On the first minute of the movie.
It's so easy to spend your time on exposition.
I'm getting better at summarizing movies. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I can learn your lesson one day. It probably won't be today.
So what movie are you going to be?
Well,
go ahead.
Should we give some kind of initial
some reactions
of rescuers? Yeah, so interestingly enough, there's like a lot of what I felt were like not disconnected scenes like Alice in Wonderland,
right.
But there's not a lot of like I was surprised that you had to pad so much in the plot because I feel like there's a lot going on, but there's really not. There's a lot going on in every scene, but it's not necessarily related to the plot.
And the basic plot itself is pretty simple. Girl gets kidnapped, mice go rescue her.
It is. It's kind of like I'm imagining like a thread from point A to point B, and every scene is kind of like a loop that comes back to the thread, and then like a loop in a different direction, and it's just like you start to at least for me, it started to get a little tiring after a while, where I'm like, I know where this scene is going to end up, but you're introducing new characters or like this unnecessary roadblock that I know is going to be solved in 5 minutes.
It's like a cul-de-sac. It's like, well, why are we going around this if we're just going to end up back?
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments like that for sure.
Yeah. So I think I like this movie more than I thought because I know that movies from the 70s tend to put me to sleep. This was a very sleepy movie.
Yeah.
But it did not put me to sleep. And so for that, I thank it.
Yeah. And I will say I am more a fan of sleepy movies than you are. This was still, in some places, a little bit of a chore. Just because, like you said, I was ahead of the movie. I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen now.
And there are no character arcs.
Yeah.
There is a problem. You know how they're going to solve it. And they do, essentially.
Yeah, and Bernard is the same mouse at the end of it.
And that seems weird to me, since he's like not even in the Rescue Aid Society. He's a janitor, so he's got something to prove. You would think that they would do more with that, but he doesn't.
He doesn't really, no.
And like Bianca and Bernard don't really have... It's more like the reason that you are invested in the story is Penny, and she's done well. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later.
She's great, yeah.
But it's not your kind of stated main characters that have anything interesting to do.
Yeah.
Even when they're at the Rescue Aid Society, it's like, well, we've always been able to solve every case we've been given.
Right.
You're not given a reason as an audience member to believe that they aren't going to solve this one.
Yeah, it felt, and I was talking about this as we were watching it. I was like there's a lot of action scenes that are like good but not quite there, and there's a lot of like attempts at humor and action together which kind of aren't there. And I realized 77, Spielberg hasn't shown people how to do this yet. Indiana Jones hasn't happened yet. if we watch this, if this movie came out after Last Crusade, after Raiders of the Lost Ark, I bet it would be a different movie because there's lessons to be learned. But I feel like it just like didn't have that. But it also reminds me of Indiana Jones in that these characters, specifically our heroes, don't change from beginning to end. And I think part of that is something we'll talk about a little bit later, which is this is not adapted from just a book, but adapted from a series.
And specifically, this plot is actually adapted from a second book in a series. So I feel, and to me, that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
That it just kind of feels like another story as
Yes.
opposed to the story.
Which, again, I know this is a weird comparison, but Indiana Jones does that well. Every movie is a different adventure for Indy.
In different stakes and
he's
arc
kind of the
and-
same guy at the beginning and the end, but other people grow around him. And, like, the movies are just really fun to watch.
Yeah.
So,
So another movie
yeah.
adapted from a children's book
Yeah.
about feisty mice.
Feisty Meisties.
Feisty Meisties.
Yes.
Is The Secret of NIMH.
Mm-hmm.
It is also a series. So that's another reason why we chose to pair these ones, because they're both based on series of mice adventure novels,
Yeah.
which is
Like all
apparently
great-
a genre.
Like all great movies.
This is actually mostly adapted from the first book, but it's Miss Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH is the first book, and then Miss Frisbee has a series.
But she's not named Miss Frisbee in this one.
She is not, because the toy Frisbee, they did not necessarily get a lawsuit from them, but they were like, we don't want to deal with
Anticipating.
this. We're not Disney. We're this new Don Bluth company. We're just going to change it to Brisbee.
Yeah.
So actually, fun fact that they had recorded the name Frisbee with all the voice actors, and then had to
Oh.
go in and like sound edit. Like,
Oh my God.
instead
They
of
had to do ADR
fr
on
sound to
80
do boo. Yeah.
on all those Brisbees.
They had to
and
like
Frisbees.
reverse engineer the audio.
Also, just worth noting, these films had like the same budget.
Yes.
Like,
It's like $7 million.
and they were only
the
produced
time.
a couple of years apart. Like, so it's really interesting, like looking at what Disney can do with $7 million and what a brand new company can do with $7 million.
It's a different 7 million, right?
It's a different 7
Disney
million.
7 million is like, we're cutting a lot of corners, we're being cheap.
Yeah.
But also they have this like animation team that's the best of the best.
And they have,
Don Bluth brings a lot of great people with him from Disney.
Yeah.
But
and
it's
you
still
can
a startup.
you could see all the money on the page or on the screen. Like you can see that money getting spent.
So
but
speaking
also-
of seeing the money, Dick,
Yeah.
when was the first time you saw this money on the screen?
Like yesterday?
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you grew up with this movie.
No, I've never
This
seen
is news
this.
to me.
I've never seen this movie.
Oh.
Except just now.
I thought you just forgot about it.
No, I had never
you're-
seen this.
You like in childhood you watched Don Bluth movies. I did not.
Yeah, I mean, so Land Before Time, for sure. All Dogs Go to Heaven.
American Tail.
American Tail.
Yeah.
And Five Goes West. Yeah. Absolutely. Those are
Okay.
some of the movies I grew up on.
But not this one.
No, and like, you know, this movie's not as popular as the others. It doesn't have 24 sequels like Land Before Time. Again, tweet at us if you want us to do all 24 Land Before Time movies. I'm down. Well, once we get a Patreon.
I wonder, Dick, what else about the timing of this movie's release would have interfered with you seeing it?
Why, it was released on the day of my birth, July 2nd, 1982.
Happy birthday, Dick and the Secret of NIMH.
Thank you. And the Secret of NIMH vinyl soundtrack
Oh,
was also released on
neat.
July 2nd,
On the same day.
1982.
Okay.
Also, Bret Hart was born on July 2nd, but not 1982.
Man.
He's much older than me.
So much history. Yeah, I'd never seen this movie. I kind of maybe thought it was like a mini series or some kind of weird TV thing. Like
Right.
Watership Down, right? Was a mini series on TV. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
And it seems like something from that time, like Rodents, a story I don't know.
Yeah.
And no one's told it to me, so I assume it's not that important.
I guess it's probably something. I don't know.
Yeah. But I was actually really impressed with this movie.
Yeah.
I liked it the better of these two movies, personally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because you can see the novel origin in this one too.
Or we think we can. We haven't.
Yeah.
Right. We haven't read any of these books.
No, we
but
have not.
We
But
can
we've
make some assumptions.
read the Wikipedia plot summaries.
That's right, we have.
So, all right, I'm putting 2 minutes on the cookie clock.
Ooh, cookie clock.
Yeah, it's better alliteration.
It is.
Anyway, I'm going to plot summarize The Secret of NIMH and maybe make similar mistakes or different mistakes as I've made in the past.
Ooh.
We'll find out.
All right.
All right,
Ready?
here I go. Mrs. Brisby.
Whoa.
We meet her. She's trying to persuade Mr. Ages, another mouse, they're all mice, into giving her a medicine for her son Timmy, who is sick. He seems preoccupied with a bunch of like mysterious things, but he gives her the medicine, takes it home to her kids, but not before she meets this crow, Jeremy, who doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything. But anyway, they outsmart this cat dragon. So there's like Peril and other friends, and then you meet the rest of her family. There is an aunt that might be a neighbor, but she's like terrible. But her kids are pretty. But Miss Brisby's kids are pretty sweet. Timmy is sick though, and it's noted that there is a tractor because they live next to a farm. The tractors come early this year, and they have to move their house to not be run over by the tractor. But that's a problem because Timmy is too sick to be taken out of the house. So Miss Brisby has to fly on Jeremy to see an owl. And that's scary, but the owl tells her, go see the rats. And she's like, what rats? So she finds these rats, and every step of the way she's mentioning her last name, and all of a sudden people are more interested in helping her when they hear that she is the deceased Jonathan Brisby's wife, widow. So she finds these rats, including this guy Nicodemus, who's like a wizard rat. They have this whole secret society of like technology and gems, and they it came from this laboratory where they were given drugs to be more smart, but then they had to go underground because no one could know they're smart. And anyway, they have to move on because they can't live as rats anymore. They can't steal electricity. So the rats are going to help her move her home, and they do, but this guy Jenner, who is very much about, like, we need to help ourselves, not anyone else, tries to destroy the house and, like, kills some people. Like, rodents die in this movie, but they do move the house, and Jenner dies, and NIMH, well, I didn't mention the word NIMH, but it's not as important as the acronym. Anyway.
The acro what?
The acronym.
Whoa.
They move the house and live happily.
So that was well over the cookie timer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be clear.
Not well over the cookie timer.
Well over.
I've gone well over the cookie timer. That wasn't it.
So just to clarify for the audience, in case they heard the same thing I heard, there's a cat. Its name is Dragon.
Yeah.
It is not a cat dragon.
Oh. Well,
Which is what I heard.
cat,
and
dragon.
I got really excited. I was like, there's a cat dragon? Oh, yeah. It's a
not.
cat named Dragon.
Also, it's not as important as you think it's going to be in the movie.
scary-ass cat,
It is a
though.
scary-ass cat. Yeah. So this movie has a lot of things happen.
There is so much in this movie.
So this movie, it was clearer to me that, like, oh, you're adapting from a book and you're trying to fit as much as possible.
I think we felt that even before I realized it was based on a book.
Oh, I did know.
Like, I think I forgot. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, things were happening.
I will say that this movie, and you noticed this watching the movie too, that there were threads dropped early on that seemed just like, oh, you're introducing too many characters and subplots, but they tied together and they were picked back up. Like, hints were dropped.
Like a bunch of multicolored strings.
Like, yes. Jeremy, the crow, is obsessed with string for some reason.
He's making a nest.
Yeah, but he got caught in them too, so he's not good at string.
He's not smart.
Anyway.
He's not good at much.
No. So there is a lot of happening in this movie, but it is easy to follow. It doesn't, by the end, it doesn't feel like there's too much. No. It just, to me, I feel like it's maybe better than it is a movie. And I think it's a fine movie. It's cool to look at for sure.
Yeah.
it's a really good advertisement for now read the book. Like, did any of this seem interesting? Like, you can read several hours more on these on these plot lines.
And this movie, I'm realizing it now because I've been trying to think of like what it reminds me of, and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like Oh, don't. It starts.
Yeah, it's kind of boring.
You start out with a mom who needs medicine for her kid. It's a very like it's more exciting than the beginning of Lord of the Rings, but it's a pretty mundane task.
Yeah.
I'm going to get medicine for my kid. Oh, we have to move soon. And then like, oh, it turns out like there's all this crazy magic and stuff, and I will take the ring, and I will drug the cat, and like it starts as such a mundane adventure and then grows into a grand adventure. And I think it does it pretty well.
I think it does it, yes, pretty well.
Pretty well.
The characters are well animated in this movie.
Oh my God,
I think
yes.
Certainly over the Rescuers, where like, I don't, like, if you're animating Bob Newhart, that should be a treat. But I felt like he was wasted in that movie. Bob Newhart is Bernard, the janitor mouse.
Yeah.
He's like weirdly wasted, but like he is allowed to be Bob Newhart in his voice acting, but no one else in the movie responds to it.
Yeah, they don't draw like you were saying, like a part of Bob Newhart's comedy is in his physicality. Like it's in his face.
Yeah.
And it's in his like
jitteriness that matches his voice.
Like he's not a big mover, but he's like jittery. He's a little like
he's got these like fine motor, yeah.
And that was missing in Bernard, so it wasn't like it just wasn't clear what was going on.
Yeah, Bernard looks no different character-wise than Bianca, who is Zsa Zsa Gabor, like
Ava Gabor.
Sorry. Apologies to the Gabor estate. Yeah, so like she could be, and like she's dressed correctly, and she sounds like Ava Gabor, so like fine, but like she could be so much more fluid in her movements, whereas Bernard could be jittery. Like there is that natural contrast there that they don't play with at all.
Yeah, there's not really,
besides costuming.
There's not really enough of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the characters in Secret of NIMH, they're not necessarily contrasting. They are like Aegis is like short and stout, and Brisby is like more the quote unquote normal mouse proportions.
She's normal mouse,
and even her, like she has 4 kids, and they all have different silhouettes.
Yeah,
I feel like the facial expression is done better in Secret of NIMH.
Yeah.
And I think that's perhaps I don't know exactly the specific like theses that Don Bluth nailed on the door before he left Disney. But I'd imagine that that's one of them. Like, I think corners were cut at Disney around this time, and facial expression is one of the things that loses out.
And one of the things that Bluth complained about at Disney was Disney failing to innovate and invest in like trying new things.
Yeah.
And just like going a very safe route. And like in NIMH, you can see so much experimentation.
There is some neat animation in NIMH.
Yeah, some really fantastic animation.
The lighting in particular, let's talk about, because the first scene that I skipped over is Nicodemus like penning a kind of like diary entry on Jonathan Brisby, who I also failed to mention my plot was part of this NIMH society. He was tested on too. Anyway, but it's the same visual effect as Ariel signing Ursula's contract, which like in my head, up until the point we watched this movie yesterday, was the first instance of that technical effect in animation.
And it was gorgeous.
It was 7 years earlier in this movie. And like just anything that like glows or sparks looks super cool.
Yeah.
There's like
also
lighting.
That contract is clearly in the Harry Potter font.
Oh, well, predates like
it's very lightning-y.
20 years then. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, like they do glows. Like I feel like I know Don Bluth to be the glow guy, right?
Yeah.
Like Land Before Time has a lot of
It
glow and
reminded me
color
of-
effect, but this is somehow better.
Yeah, it reminded me of in Prince of Egypt when they're walking through the Red Sea and we see the lightning and we've just got that glow of the water and there's the whale behind it and we
silhouette,
both
yeah.
go like, oh my God, that's beautiful
Yeah.
looking. Like that, I feel like comes from like some of this Bluth
Yeah, 'cause there's, like,
experimentation that he's doing here.
The rats have like harnessed electricity from the farmer's home.
Yeah, so
in a way that their world is always sparking, but in
Yeah.
like different, like blue lightning, red lightning, green lightning, and it lights up the whole scene in this very realistic way.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got these ambient lights of different colors coming in and like giving mood to the scene without like being explicit. Like sometimes in this movie, but especially in like Land Before Time, it's like this scene is red now. And it can be a little much.
The
it
character
happens,
colors change.
Yeah,
like,
it happens a
for
little
entire
bit in
10-minute
NIMH,
segments.
but it's not. It's like not.
No.
I think it's done well.
NIMH, I feel like I know what colors
Yeah.
everyone is. Land Before Time, I have no idea.
No, but these like ambient colors, these like color washes are super effective.
Whereas I feel like Rescuers has a very monochromatic, not
Yeah,
just one color, but like
it's not
the
very
palette is kind of
colorful.
the same from New York to this bayou where they chase
Yeah.
Medusa. Like it's a lot of like grays and like olive greens and
There was one
burgundies.
visual effect you called out in Rescuers, though. Do you remember?
Ooh, was it the diamond itself? No. What are you? You're making a
Fireworks.
cheerleader.
Fireworks.
Oh, well, those were just real, right? There's a scene where they're flying on the bird, right? And there's fireworks around them, and it just looks like animation on top of like filmed fireworks.
Yeah, it looked like,
I don't think those were animated.
but I don't know how they would just be filmed.
I guess so. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had forgotten about that.
legitimately, I'm not sure.
And it looked cool. It didn't look hokey.
Yeah.
It didn't look like
it
live
looked
action
really
animation
neat.
mixed.
I was super impressed by the
Yeah.
fireworks. They were cool.
I will say, there are like the action scenes in Rescuers, which is like a third of the movie, but they're so isolated that it
Yeah.
seems weird. It look good. Like they're well choreographed, they're well animated, and especially like Medusa's vehicles look really good. Her car in New York and her like
Swamp buggy.
swamp boat in the swamp.
Yeah.
Those are animated really well.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lighting effect there too with like headlights that looks pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When she's chasing Penny and she's got like her searchlight / headlight.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see like there's definitely like if Secret of NIMH had been the next Disney movie, I would believe it because I'm seeing some of this technology and obviously it followed Don Bluth, right? He took what they had been working on.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like Secret of NIMH maybe uses it more evenly as opposed to just here's a moment.
Yeah. And yeah, it seems like it's a bigger part of that movie. I feel like he said, oh, there's an electric rat land. Great. We're going to go nuts with it.
Although that is in the book, there's not the mystical portion to it.
There's not magic.
I assume they're borrowing electricity, but they're just like regular rats.
Right.
These rats in the movie are like magical. There's like a gem.
Well, Nicodemus is magical,
Yeah,
and the gem
I
gives
suppose that's
Mrs.
the
Brisby
only.
magical powers.
Yeah,
So Nicodemus is a weird magical rat,
yeah.
but that's not in the book.
That's not in the book. Like Nicodemus is in the book, but he's not magical.
He's just
He's just a smart rat
smart rat.
from lab testing.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
so
I'm just-
visually, I
I'm
feel
just
like
thinking about the visuals. I'm
these
like,
movies have things in common, but Secret of NIMH takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
Story-wise,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit more gray area.
Yeah.
I think we both. What story resonates with you more of the two we've seen? We've seen them in the last week.
NIMH?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like neither. So that's the thing is I think Nim had a more coherent driving narrative. Had some reason for characters to do something besides, oh, let's go do it, which is
what we do. This is our job.
Yeah, which is literally rescuers like, oh, come on, let's do it. It'll be an adventure. So I think Nim has a story that needs to be told more.
And it is, I mean, it's a first book as opposed to a second book, and I think that makes a difference.
But I don't know if it's a particularly better story, because both of them are kind of like Nim for me is more interesting than the Rescuers, and it's better looking than the Rescuers and stuff like that. But story wise, I'm kind of like except for the bit where like I did not know there were magical rats going into this, and like we start going to that underground rat lair, and I'm like, what?
Oh, it's really cool, yeah.
Aside from that, like there wasn't like I feel like the story itself is kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, to me these are both heavy plot stories and very much from like a third person narrative's perspective.
Yeah.
There is a problem, it gets solved, as opposed to like this character has this problem and needs to grow, which is what you get Renaissance and beyond, like the very much talked about and then, mocked by Pixar, like the I Want song is more than just a song. It's a feature of a story that a character needs to want something in order for the audience to be invested.
Yeah.
And Nim gets closer in that, like, she wants Timmy to get better. Brisby wants Timmy to get better, but there's no... and we were talking about this, that, like, I kind of want to fix Nim because it's so close to getting, like, a character-driven element. Rescuers is not. Like,
right.
Penny wants to be adopted. I guess that's, like, a human story, but it's not the focus.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happens for her at the end through no reason other than there's press involved when she comes back with these mice. Like,
yeah. If Penny was the main character of Rescuers, I think it'd be a more compelling movie.
She's the best character in it.
And the voice actor is great. And I think Nim, like you said, it gets closer, but there's a lot of decisions that Mrs. Brisby makes that are not related, that, like, I don't know why she's making them.
Well, and you give her a reason. So this is what we had been talking about, that, like, so she keeps meeting these characters and they're like, oh, Jonathan Brisby, you're his butt. Like, we will definitely help you. He saved my life. And she's like, what? Like, she doesn't know that he's involved in this secret thing.
She's not totally like, what? She's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll figure this out later.
So I feel like she knows her husband was a good person. Like, it was her husband. And I feel like what I needed was, because the ending, like how she is able to save her kids from sinking in a swamp in their house because this evil rat has sabotaged them, is she is able to summon the courage of heart that this gemstone in the necklace needs to do great and powerful things. And then the cinder block where their house is rises up out of the mud, and
That's true.
it's because she, like, really wanted her family to be saved, but also she has escalated. Like, she's able to see this owl who, like, owls kill mice, but she's gonna see him anyway because she needs this medicine for Timmy, and she sneaks into this house of humans that will want to kill her if they see her because she needs this thing for Timmy, and this is the next thing. And if you had established at the beginning that she's like, I don't do the big things for my family, my husband did, and now he's
did
dead.
That, and now
now I can't do anything.
Yeah. If it was like, oh, I'm just a mom, and then she's like...
And then little by little, she gets this courage of heart where you see, well,
kind of the Incredibles
it was there
track.
All along.
The Helen in the Incredibles track.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that just even stating that at the beginning, the rest of the plot supports it.
Yeah.
So I think that would have added a more emotionally resonant thread.
I want to take a moment to talk about, let's talk about Secret of Nim. And I'm just going to say some names. Nicodemus, Brisby, Aegis,
Jenner.
Timmy, Justin, and Jeremy.
Oh,
Okay.
Justin is my favorite.
Timmy is her son. Her other kids have like cool names,
Well,
right?
it's like Martin.
So
I
not
feel like
really.
Charlotte. Yeah, they're like not. But they're not Justin.
But Timmy especially is a name that just makes me laugh because I think of like, oh no, Timmy's trapped in a well, or like,
And I think it's
Tiny
coded as
Tim.
Yeah, it's coded as such.
And I'm just like, okay,
it's kind of
Timmy's
like
sick.
the weakling child.
But then like, fine, we have two characters, Jeremy and Justin.
Like I don't know. I don't think of the name Justin as existing in 1982. For I guess babies, because that's
I mean, that's fair. But like also two J names that are both like generic white guy names.
Jonathan
yeah, and
is the
Jonathan.
dead mouse, yeah.
There's so much J.
Yeah.
And they're not like, if it was like Jehoshaphat
Well, there's
and
Jenner,
Jeremy,
right? Jenner is like, that's weird.
Jenner's an interesting name.
Yeah.
I know Jenner as a last name. I've never heard it as a first name.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm listening. Jeremy, Jonathan.
Jeremy's the crow. Justin is this rat who he's like the head of the soldier rats.
Yeah.
And like develops a quick crush on Mrs. Brisby.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
might hook up after the movie ends. Like almost definitely.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really have a reason to be there.
No.
He kind of like facilitates some networking.
He is in a fight scene.
Yeah.
That's why he's
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm glad it was redeemed at the end when she's the one who causes the house to be saved.
Yeah.
But like the fight scene with the villain, like she's like having she's having a conversation with him, like don't let my house sink, and Jenner's like, F you. I'm the king of the rats now.
Well, he like raises his sword to kill her.
And then Justin steps in and starts fighting with them. And then he's got like a henchman who ends up throwing the dagger at him in the
Which
final.
is by the way, that fight scene, that fight scene is good.
Yeah.
It's well shot. It's well paced. That final like dagger throw. Whoa, that was awesome.
Also, there are 3 characters you see die on screen in this movie. And in the same 5 minutes.
And you see more than that bleed.
Yeah.
Every character that dies bleeds. Mrs. Brisby bleeds. There's a lot of blood in this movie.
The directors wanted a PG for this movie. Like, in part because, like, it's dark, but also to show, like, this doesn't need to be a kid's medium.
Yeah, to set themselves apart.
Yeah, and I think it would have, except for PG-13 wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
It wasn't invented yet, so I feel like PG was
this is still
saved
like
for, like, more the PG-13 would be now.
This feels so strongly in the PG category.
Yes.
But, yeah, back then PG meant a
But yeah,
different thing.
you had to distribute it over the 3. So, yeah.
Funny, I had a VHS copy of the MASH movie.
Okay.
And well, it was awesome. And the box had an R rating, and the tape had a PG rating.
Oh.
It was confusing.
Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like ratings were just kind of a Wild West for a while.
Yeah. I think still kind of are.
Yeah.
It's all a mystery.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been leaning toward NIMH lately because we've been talking about story, so that's appropriate. Yeah, Rescuers doesn't have a story.
And I'll say I enjoyed watching Rescuers. Definitely more than you did. There are some really great moments. I think the action scenes are really fun. But, like, it's hard not to complain because there are so many sleepy scenes.
It's paced really weird.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's paced appropriately for what I know 70s movies, like live action movies, to be, in that there's, like, a lot of... I feel like a big portion of this for me is sound editing. Like, there is so much dead air between characters in a dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, they clearly, either they did not have Bob Newhart and Ava Gabor in the same room, that's probably most likely, or if they did, they were like so concerned about the separate tracks that it's just like no one interrupts each other. No one speaks within like 2 seconds of each other.
Right.
2 seconds is probably exaggerating.
And
but
there's so much silence.
so much. There's not, you talked about this, that like score is missing in this movie. And I think parts of Secret of NIMH too.
Yeah. The Secret of NIMH, there were
The
some
action
moments
parts
where
are scored well.
score and sound were just not there. And
Yeah, like the equal is like if characters are off screen, there is an intention to make them sound quieter, but they're so quiet that
you can't
hear them.
I meant more like sound effects.
Oh.
Where like there's a point in NIMH towards the beginning where Mrs. Brisby or Jeremy, I forget which, like splashes into the water, or they go underwater and the cat dragon jumps in after them, and it doesn't make a noise, and it's weird.
Yeah.
It feels cheap.
Yeah.
And it feels like I'm out of the movie.
Yeah.
Like what are you doing?
And I wonder, so that's like, we didn't notice that so much in Peter Pan. That must be either scored through or there's enough like that's the most recent old movie we've watched.
Yeah, and I mean that kept our attention.
Yeah. I didn't notice silence if there was.
And I think there was plenty of I feel like that was scored, if not through, then it was scored a lot. Like you had musical cues for Hook, you had the crocodile song, you had Peter Pan's music.
And maybe that's just there were more motifs that they had at their disposal. Yeah. But also, I mean, neither of these movies are musicals. They have songs in them, but they're not musicals.
Boy, do they have songs in them.
Oh, boy. Rescuers starts with a song, right? Like, they're mostly sung by, it's probably not Karen Carpenter, but it's like whoever was the off-brand Karen Carpenter.
It is sleepy folk music.
Oh, man.
It is sleepy as hell.
And it's like not even good. It's not even, I don't know. So it's like, it's all narration. It's like a song happening while there is action as opposed to a song related to the action. Mm-hmm. There's an opening theme. In Rescuers, there is one diegetic song, and there's the Rescue Aid Society has their song that they sing at the beginning of meetings, and that's fun. But otherwise, there's like a sad song in the beginning, a sad song when like in some kind of Penny scene later, you know, when you see her kidnapped. And maybe like a love song at the end, because apparently Bernard and Bianca develop a romantic relationship that has no basis in any of the text. Yeah. Yeah. So there are songs in it, and NIMH is that way too, although it's less jarring. That way too.
It's less jarring, and I kind of got to give it to NIMH for having Paul Williams in there.
Oh, say more about that song.
It's not a very good song.
It's at the end, right?
Yeah. But Paul Williams wrote Rainbow Connection and all the music for the Muppet movie. Yeah. So he gets a pass.
So that's interesting because you say the Muppet movie. We saw it last week.
Yeah, we just saw that.
It had a special theater run. Yeah. Like a Fathom Events thing. So we saw it in a movie theater. Mm-hmm. Super fun. Muppet movie is square in between this. It's 79, right?
Yeah. It's amazingly well paced.
So it's and it's
funny.
And it's a family movie. Mm-hmm. It's not an animated quote unquote children's movie. Right. I don't know that Don Bluth would have said that Secret of NIMH is a specifically children's movie, but that's how it was marketed. But so I'm watching these two movies, and NIMH is paced better. Mm-hmm. It still has some silence that's weird, but in general, it's paced better. Mm-hmm. But especially as I was watching Rescuers, I thought, well, maybe this is just how the 70s were. And, like, my modern sensibilities, like a faster, I'm a Sesame Street kid. I need a segment change every 30 seconds.
Where's Inch High Private Eye? Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, I just saw the Muppet movie. That's funny. Mm-hmm. I'm always interested in what's going on screen. Nothing ever lasts too long, with the exception of the occasional Miss Piggy scene, but that's just a personal problem.
That's a personal problem.
I have with the
That's
Muppets
a Kate
franchise.
problem. That's not a Miss Piggy
I hate
problem.
her so much. but like it's quick paced, and I think we were talking about this. You said that Jim Henson is in general more subversive and more like against the grain for typical genre characteristics of the time. But I would say by the time the Muppet movie comes out, Muppets are fairly mainstream, or at least they're supported by a mainstream.
They're more known, yeah.
Audience. So it's possible to have a fun movie in the 70s. Rescuers just chooses not to be.
So now here's a counterpoint I'd like to make on this. Rescuers is not a fun movie, and it is not supposed to be.
Sure.
I don't think it's supposed to be funny, and I think that's part of where the pacing falls apart for me. Is like I don't mind the sleepy, kind of slow beginnings. The like we're like taking our time searching for clues. There's a lot of like maybe intentional, maybe unintentional silence. Like I don't mind that until it gets to comedy that isn't funny. Because that's where this movie was testing my patience.
Okay. Say more.
I loved the action scenes. I loved like any scene with Penny just being sweet and adorable and loving her.
She's very compelling.
Loving her bear so much. Awesome. And like I didn't mind what's her name? Medusa and her like
those are
her dude she beats up.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of interesting, compelling stuff. But then they threw in some comedy, which like there's Bob Newhart who's not really doing jokes.
No.
And then there's a bird.
That's correct.
In this movie who's played by I forget his name already. Jim Jordan, who was Fibber McGee on Fibber McGee and Molly. As we all know.
I just shrugged my shoulders.
Fibber McGee and Molly was I assume a vaudeville act and then a radio show. Back when
that makes sense.
Radio comedy was the thing that you would listen to. I've listened to quite a bit of Fibber McGee and Molly because I worked at a job once where I needed things to listen to and podcasts weren't really a thing yet.
All right.
So it was Fibber McGee and Molly. It was Abbott and Costello. Not Abbott Costello. Abbott Costello. And it was a lot of fun.
Okay. I understand that thinking about this character.
Yeah.
To me, this character is like the stated. I feel like the directors and the story writers were like, this story is kind of like a little bit dark and it's like dramatic. We need to have a comic character.
We got to put a funny one in.
And as that, I understand it. Like, I think I'm most interested in his voice out of all the characters because he's doing something with it.
I kind of feel like he's like the Buddy Hackett of this movie.
Absolutely.
Right? Where they're like, let's get an old comedian to do a funny thing.
A funny bird.
Yeah, a funny bird. Yeah. Buddy Hackett played Scuttle as Little Mermaid. Like, funny bird, let's go.
And like what the jokes are that he's like bad at flying. He runs a flight service, like an airline service, but he's a bird. He's the plane.
It's true.
And he's bad at flying.
That's the joke.
That's the joke. That's the one joke.
Over
he's
and
in
over
like
again.
20 minutes of this 80-minute movie.
And Bernard says like 5 times in the movie, I wish we would have taken a train.
Yeah.
Like
apparently
over and over again.
That's based on Bob Newhart doesn't like flying. So the character trait.
I bet that joke would have worked better if he only said it once.
Yeah.
Like the comedy in this doesn't work. And in fairness, the same can be said for NIMH.
There's
also a
quote unquote funny bird played by a comedian.
In this case, Dom DeLuise, who I guess Don Bluth really wanted to make his Robin Williams or his.
Well, Dom DeLuise appears in several Don Bluths.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. He's in this. He's in American Tail, and then he's like he's like one of the biggest roles in American Tail 5 Goes West. Yeah. And
this is John Ratzenberger.
Yeah, he's his Ratzenberger. Yeah, and he's fine. He's
He's
fine.
fine. So this
kinda.
character, okay,
The character doesn't
Jeremy
fit
the
in this
Crow.
movie.
His thing is he's like obnoxious. He's bad at strings, but he collects strings, so he's always getting caught up in strings. And Miss Brisby is like,
He really wants a girl.
the scene that they meet. Basically, she spends the entire scene like gnawing away at strings he's caught himself into, and then
Yeah.
he does it again.
And I find myself as an audience member being frustrated by this character.
And we were
'Cause
as
I'm
we
on
were
Mrs. Brisby's side, and he's just getting tangled.
So the comedy to me in this character comes from Miss Brisby. Like
Yes.
several times in the movie after this first scene, he's like, "What can I do to help?" And she's like, find some strings for me. I really need strings."
Go collect all the strings.
She's bullshitting, which is
Yeah.
hilarious. Like, she's like, "Oh, this guy's going to slow me down. I just need to come up with a dumb project for him to do."
And-
that's funny.
And this is a mom move and
Yeah.
a teacher move.
Yes, it is.
I know this because you have described using this move on your students that are just being
You
obnoxious.
please
like,
do this for me?
can you be in charge of this? Yeah, I'm in
I'm in
charge.
charge.
Yeah.
That's funny, but then you like follow him on the misadventure for too long.
Don't need that.
So when we're watching this, we're thinking like, "Oh, he must have been a really big character in the book, and people would have been pissed if he had been cut out."
That's what I said. You're like,
Yeah.
why is he in here? I'm like, you know what? I bet he's a huge character in the book.
Yeah.
If you cut him out, people are going to be so upset because their favorite character is gone.
Turns out, like what we have learned from Wikipedia is like he's a very minor part in the book.
He's not
His
that
role was
much.
greatly expanded for the movie. What?
Why?
Why?
I know they felt they needed comedy.
I think you
And this
can give
is-
it to like Mr.
yeah.
Ages, like this kind of like somewhat bumbling, very like kind of nerdy intellectual mouse who's like trying to get these experiments together.
Yeah.
I think you could have given more to him. The kids do some good comedy work.
Yeah.
The mice kids. Yeah, I think you could have brought it in there. I think Jeremy is an entirely worthless character.
And I really would love to have seen this movie be more focused on Brisby and the adventure and the action
And her development
and
as
less focused on like what feels like, which was it probably wasn't, but feels like a studio note. Right? It's Don Bluth's studio, so he wasn't
Yeah.
getting noted, but it feels like a studio
he
note.
noted
Like,
himself.
hey, if you don't put like we were talking about with Hunchback, right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is like kind of a really strong, serious movie that also has comedy that kind of slows it down and doesn't really
Yeah.
work. Is like, we got to put a funny character in for the kids to love. It's like, no.
Kids love good characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so
I feel like we're complaining.
good thing a funny bird was never used again.
Yeah. But I do.
But Scuttle has done well.
And also, I remember, again, haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I remember liking The Bird and Rescuers Down Under.
Is it not the same bird?
I think it's the same bird.
It looks like the same bird.
Yeah. But I'm saying, I remember liking him.
Well, we'll do that next Mouse Month.
Next Mouse Month.
Oh, boy. So, Dick, I think it's time
Yeah.
for the final cut.
I think it's time for the final cut, Kate.
Final cut.
Cape Cod.
Dick, if you were to shout out a scene from the
Ooh.
movie The Rescuers.
Okay.
What movie? What movie
The
movie
Rescuers.
would it be?
The Rescuers.
Oh, hey.
If I was going to shout out a scene from The Rescuers, it would be the scene where we finally see the thing that Penny is dreading. Is Medusa and
Snopes?
Guy.
Snoops? Snopes?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is Snopes. He after this movie he
Founded a website.
founded a website based on fact checking.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So they put Penny in this bucket and then put her down into like a cave because she can fit and neither of them can. And we see like Bianca and Bernard are down there. We follow them down with Penny. and it's scary. Like it's a weird abandoned cave. I don't love tight spaces. I wouldn't describe myself as claustrophobic. I've been, spelunking. I've been like cave diving. I've done that stuff. It didn't bother me, but it like there is something about it and about having no escape, right? Mm-hmm. And in this cave, there's this big pit, and this pit is where when the like tides rise, the water comes in.
Yeah.
And like when they like there's a bit where they like fall into it and then it splashes them up, and it's so effectively done, and it's such a tense scene that like, even though like 20 seconds later it had cut from a completely different scene, and I was like, wait, is there a scene missing? But this cave sequence is just so effective that I was like riveted. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good set.
Yeah, it's a clever set piece, and the stakes. Mm-hmm. The water is going to rise in that hole.
Yeah.
When the water rises, you're in trouble. Your expectation has been set. You know what the danger is. The danger comes. They escape the danger. It's so well done. So, Kate, if you had to pick a scene from The Rescuers, what movie would it be?
Also, The Rescuers.
Whoa.
We agree on that.
What scene do you want to call out?
So I'm also going to focus on a Penny-centric scene because I think she is the strongest character in the movie.
So good.
There is a scene, so Bianca and Bernard get to this Devil's Bayou where she is, where she has been kidnapped, and they are like first observing her specifically, and she's been sent to her room by these evil people. You'll have to find the diamond tomorrow. And she puts on her jammies and she says her prayers. Mm-hmm. And the scene is so lovely because she's saying, like, there's just this, you don't know very much about Penny, and I feel like this is a weakness of the movie, that they could have really dug into this character. Like, she's the most likable person in the movie. She's got like this spunk that you don't. I read about a year ago. I found the book on the New York Public Library's like here are ebooks website. Right? It's over. What is it? I don't over. No.
Was it Lord of the Rings?
It was there's an app. Anyway, it's the New York Public Library's electronic books, and I was looking up various things, and they're like, here's this book on Disney females. I'm like, great. And I get it, and it's basically like, I think someone's dissertation in a book form. But it's I'll post the real title, but it's something like Good Girls and Wicked Witches, females in Disney movies.
I remember when you were reading
So it's
this.
it's a study of like Snow White through, I think it's only through the Renaissance at that point. So I think it's Snow White through Mulan. And one of the theses by the end is that Disney does not let its adults females do much, but it lets its girls do a lot. Wendy, Alice, Penny are three that are kind of lifted up in this research as like, these females have a lot of agency. They get to have like well-rounded personalities with like strengths and flaws that you don't see in many adult females in Disney movies.
Yeah, we're introduced, like the first time we see Penny like in the swamp, she's running away. Yeah, like she's.
I mean, yeah, she's like, sending this message in a bottle
she's
to
not
whoever
scared
will.
Of these alligators.
Nope.
She like fights back against.
Yeah. It's like a running gag that she gets like picked up by the britches by these alligators, and she's like, "Oh, this again!" Like
alligators again.
Like, I'll do better next time. I'll escape you. But so anyway, she's saying her prayers, and she's like, please help me get out of this situation. Running away is not working the way that I thought, which is lovely. Yeah. She's like 4 in this movie, 4 or 5. And she gives this really like sincere and spunky prayer, opens her eyes. There are two mice in front of her. And they're like, Penny? And she's like, who are you? Like, she's not scared.
Not phased.
She's not phased. She's just like, new friends.
Hello, mice.
And just that scene I really love because it humanizes her in this, like, she's still doing her daily routines.
Yeah.
She's been kidnapped to this totally weird environment with these terrible people. She's still saying her nightly prayers. She's framing it as like running away has not worked out for me right now. Like, she's both aware and like naively unaware of her situation, which is very real for a child. And then she's like, cool, now there's mice.
Yeah.
I found myself like crying and then laughing immediately.
She's such a sweet character. And I'm so glad you called out this scene because this is the other scene that I wanted to call out in this movie. Yeah. So effective.
We need a Penny movie.
Yeah, I love this
It's
kid.
not this, but we need a Penny movie.
I love this kid so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So in The Secret of NIMH, Penny is
Ooh.
not in this movie.
Penny's not in this
Unfortunately.
movie.
A scene shout out.
Oh man, I'm starting on NIMH too. All right. That's okay. Secret
We're
of
taking
NIMH.
turns.
It's gonna be I think there's a lot of there aren't any scenes in Secret of NIMH that really hit me emotionally like those scenes with Penny. But there's like a lot of cool stuff going on. And so for me, it's going to be the initial, the first time Mrs. Brisby walks into the rose bush and we see this underground rat lair. And we see first off, we see all this amazing lighting and like these cool electronics and these machines, which like you could tell Don Bluth loves drawing machines because
He sure does.
mice operating machinery comes back in American Tail, and it's like bigger machines, but it's like cogs and wheels. And
Yeah,
you
that's
can
interesting.
Tell he loves cogs and wheels.
And even like Anastasia, those train scenes are really detailed and
Really
fun.
detailed. Yeah, he likes him some machinery, and he does it well. So good for him. And then we are experiencing this like new world with her, and we're getting some world building in a way that like I feel like a lot of movies don't do. And it's something like I like complained on Twitter. I'm like, I need more movies where the first half hour is just world building. Like I watched half of Jurassic World just for the world building. Because I'm like, this movie kind of sucks, but the beginning's neat. Or Jurassic Park or Jaws, where it's just like, cool. Half hour, we're just going to introduce you to this island. Then there's going to be a shark thing. And I think that this movie does some world building at the beginning, and it does this awesome bit of world building in the middle where you're like learning a little bit about rat society through Mrs. Brisby's eyes. And then as you're like in awe, as you're fascinated by this, wham! An axe drops like right in front of her. This dude chases her. She's running from him, and like she's running frantic, and like there's like one point where she's like trying to run, but she can't really make headway in water. And it's good because if she had run, she would have got hit by the axe. Like it's just it's such an effective like kind of a jump scare, and really, again, a really, I guess, scary scene, which is something I don't feel like animated movies do a lot of.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I don't feel like I've said that I've seen a scary scene in any of the movies we've watched so far.
There are scary moments, but to have it extended into a scene is rare. Yeah.
I'll also say that I didn't know how this movie would end. At the end, Miss Brisby's house is like sinking into mud.
Yeah.
And then it goes under the mud.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
her 4 children.
They just killed 4 children.
Just died.
I legitimately thought that was how it was going to end. And I was like, this is fucked. No, that's not how it ended.
Then
it was
she saves
fine.
it. Yeah.
Kate, do you have a call out? And I hope it wasn't that scene where Miss Frisbee's children almost die.
It would have been that, but no. Not the scene where children almost die. So that scene is interesting because she saves there's this big moment where the necklace, the gem starts to work by itself, and it recalls back Nicodemus's words that the courage of heart. And there's a great score that I don't have the name in front of me, but the person who scored this
Jerry
movie,
Goldsmith. I'll look it up.
I don't know. The person who scored this movie says it to this day is his favorite score that he's ever written. It's his first score, and it's his favorite score he's ever written. And I get it. The music is so effective at that point where the cinder block rises up. I feel Jerry Goldsmith.
Got it.
I feel like what it needs is a few seconds in. I feel like you need one of the kids to peek out and be add that kind of human character connection, and that's what I'm missing from that. The music is carrying all of the weight, and I feel like you see one set of mouse eyes, and that would just right? So that's not my scene because it's missing mouse eyes.
But what is your scene?
My scene is when Miss Frisbee is caught in the mouse cage in the house. So she makes it, she puts the sleeping powder in, we didn't even talk about this, in Dragon the cat's food because her husband had been doing that for several years because the cat is a terrible wolf cat creature.
This cat is frightening.
Unless his food is drugged, and then he just sleeps.
Which earlier in the film you hear the wife of the household say oh, I've never seen a cat so lazy. And it turns out rats have been drugging him for years.
Yeah, for years.
Awesome.
So she is tasked with this cat drugging thing, momentarily. We don't have another person that's small enough.
She's like, I'll do it.
So she does that, but ultimately she gets trapped by this boy, the boy in the house who wants to keep her as a pet. So she's in this hanging cage, and she is trying to escape, and she's doing all these things to escape, and she can't figure out a way. And then she cuts her arm, again, blood, and she dips it in this water trough. And as she's dipping it, she sees her hand, the enlargement of her hand in the water, which is a cool animation effect, and then realizes, oh, this trough extends outside the cage.
Yeah.
I can go in this water, get outside the cage, unlock the thing. And it's all non-verbally. She's the only one there, so there's no reason for her to be speaking. It feels very much like a standard Pixar moment to me where you see exactly the thought process of this character and not a word is said, and it's not, she hasn't searched and found with her eyes this angle. It's because her hand is bleeding that she dips it in the water. It's this domino effect of events, and then she eventually gets out that way. And I just really did that. It stuck with me as oh, this is a cool moment, and this is not the story. People thought about this moment and thought about multiple ways to do this, and someone came up with this, and it was decided that this was the best idea in the room. It's you could see the creative process and the decision-making process, which only comes when you're really concerned about the story.
And the animation when she is because she has to push the thing out, and she can't push it out that far.
Her head is slightly too big for the opening.
And she's scrabbling to try and get out.
Yeah.
And it's so effective.
Yeah.
Again, it's this moment of tension where I'm just what's going to happen? So good. So good.
Yeah.
Nice. Kate, I'm gonna ask you to talk again.
Okay.
I want to know if you're going to pick between these two movies. You can pick characters, creators, however you want. You're going to pick one MVP. Who's your MVP of these two movies?
I'm going to pick Penny.
Nice.
She's got character definition. She's got strengths and flaws, naivetes. And she's someone that you really want to root for.
No.
Yeah. And Mrs. Brisby is a strong lead as well. I feel like she could have had a little bit of penny dust added to her character, and it would have helped. No. It would have just pushed it over the edge. But Yeah, Penny is like to me, even slash especially with the Renaissance, is like a standout female character in Disney canon that like
Nice.
it's like so unexpected for like I feel like I know the beats of a Disney film and I know what Disney characters are, and Penny does not fit the mold, and
Yeah.
it's great.
And like as far as like the like she could have been a little orphan Annie. Like I'm precocious.
Right.
And like she is precocious kind of, but she might not be if she hadn't been kidnapped.
Right. And hadn't been an orphan looking for a family, and like one of the things the villain uses to like kind of stick a knife in her is because you see a little bit of backstory with them. The Bernard and Bianca find this cat in the orphanage that knew Penny. And he tells a little bit of backstory, and like one of the things is that she doesn't think she's pretty enough to be adopted. That these other girls are prettier, and when Medusa has a short scene with her, that's like, "Oh, if I find the diamond, like, will you adopt me?" "Oh no, sweetie, you're far too homely to be adopted." And it's like this dumb premise. Like, I don't want to give, credence to this idea of like beauty being what a female's worth is, but like for a 4-year-old, where like and this kind of external thing that you're not really sure the 4-year-old is buying into, it's effective
It
as an
was
external thing.
such a mean scene.
So mean.
I was so furious at our bad guy right there. I was like, up until then, Medusa was just kind of like, oh, she's
zany.
She's kind of, she wants a diamond.
Yeah.
And she was just horrible in that moment. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, she's a bad guy. I hate her.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like Penny tears up, and like so she has these.
And then we tear up.
Yeah.
And then
Penny.
it's a whole thing.
Dick, do you have an MVP?
Oh boy. So I was gonna pick Penny if you didn't.
You could pick Penny.
No, I mean,
she's great.
I'm gonna try and switch it up. Justin. No, I think it's gonna be Mrs. Brisby. Is gonna be our other like female. I mean, I guess Bianca is the female lead of Rescuers, but Penny's the lead. So this is gonna be Mrs. Brisby. I think she's there could have been more done with her to develop her. But her dedication to getting stuff done, and her, despite experiencing all these crazy ass things, like, oh, suddenly we're in a magical rat kingdom, and it turns out my husband was like a secret mouse rat spy that would have lived to be 1,000 years old or something.
Yeah.
She takes that in stride.
She sure
And
does.
she's like, that's all great.
Timmy's still sick.
Timmy is
and we
sick.
need to move my home.
And he is stuck in the house. And we can't move him from the house because it's too chilly and he'll die if he goes outside. So we need to move the house. That's her whole thing. And like I think she gets a little sidetracked on occasion. But generally, it keeps despite seeing that owl, which that owl is so well animated.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It doesn't have pupils.
He's so big and just like, but yeah, like despite all of that, she's like, I just want my kids back. So
We all want the same thing.
Mrs. Brisby.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Crossover. I'm going to make you talk
Oh
again.
my God.
So we're going to cross over these two films in some way. What are you going to do?
I'm going to cross over. All right, here's what I'm going to do. It's going to be like, I'm going to take the bird from Rescuers, put him in Secret of NIMH, take everything else from Secret of NIMH except Jeremy and put it in Rescuers, and just leave the birds in their own movie.
The birds have their own movie.
I mean, maybe that would make them better if they were like riffing off each other. They were like both in a comedy movie of their own. Like as a more serious crossover, I think Miss Brisby would be great in the Rescue Aid Society.
Yeah.
Like she rescues her kids. I'd love to see her. Like, I'd love to see her on more mouse adventures. Yeah, I want her to be an adventure mouse.
Mm-hmm. Adventure mouse.
What about you?
So what I kind of want to do is, so these two villains or stated villains, the villains aren't the most important part of either of these movies. It's more the circumstance that is the antagonist. But the two villains are interesting.
Yeah.
I like Medusa a lot.
Yeah.
I like Jenner a lot. There's Jenner the rat. We have barely talked about him because he's not super important. But there's a scene that's like the mice debating like isolationism versus aid to others in need. I think there are some interesting political themes there. And Jenner is like very much like Medusa is like she could be sisters with Cruella de Vil in terms of her animation.
Yeah.
I feel like Jenner is the first chronological instance of a Renaissance villain in terms of its visual style. Like he's very close to Scar. He's very close to Gaston, Rasputin. Like there's a lot of modern character, or like I mean Ratigan because he's also a rat. But Mouse Month, so many mice and rats. But I think he's super interesting. So I kind of want to Captain Planet these two villains and make them better, like more powerful than the sum of their parts. Because I feel like they're interesting parts of their movies, but they could be more interesting. Like there's more to play with. So maybe just combining their like sheer screen brilliance, not necessarily personality characteristics. I don't really super know where I'm going with this.
It's all right. Can I call out real quick?
Sure.
Like a little mini scene shout out. Uh-huh. So first off, Medusa's animation. Mm-hmm. Medusa's animation. There we go. That's how you say that word.
Animation
is awesome. Mm-hmm. The way she sits down is like, I don't know. She sits down like butt and then like back and legs.
There's some Ursula,
like a twist.
Right?
Yeah.
There's like some early Ursula.
Yeah. She has like a really interesting way of moving.
Yeah.
And
they really figured out her weight.
Yes. And there's a scene where Penny imitates her. Mm-hmm. And they do, and the way they animate Penny, like they don't just animate her the same way. They animate her like a girl would imitate this woman who moves in this weird fluid way. So fun. Yeah. Like that is a scene where the comedy worked in this movie.
Yes.
Basically Penny worked in this movie.
Penny worked in this
so
movie.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's also got those like concentric circle eyes when she gets really batty.
Yeah.
And that's like a Jungle Book 101 Dalmatians thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mind there not being strong villains, but I think these are two opportunities that you could really play off of them.
Nice. Nice.
All right, so the final cut.
Is it time?
Cut. It is.
I guess it is.
It sure is.
Wow.
Dick.
Yeah.
Rescuers. Do you re-release, special edition, or vault it?
My answer for these is going to sound real similar both times. Mm-hmm. Rescuers, here's what I do. I do a special edition. So to clarify to anyone who's not listened to an episode before, the idea of this segment is we can either re-release a movie as it is, do some sort of special edition, which is usually like some cuts or edits, but
alteration of some sort.
Sometimes it's turning it into a ride. Sometimes it's putting it in a museum or whatever.
We're trying not to do that as much
We're trying
anymore.
not to do that one as much. And then the final is throw it into the Disney vault, never to be seen again. Or, in this case, the Bluth vault. Wait, which movie did you say first?
Rescuers.
Then in this case, the Disney Vault.
He worked on it. It can be thrown in his
There
vault
you
too.
go. I want this movie to be updated. Or I want to be special editioned. I want score throughout, or at least through the scenes where it makes sense to have a score. That means most of the action scenes and comedy scenes. I want some of the comedy scenes taken away, and I would like more emphasis placed on the mystery and the action and the heart of this film, which is Penny. Like a more Penny-centric focus. But yeah, like just embrace the fact that this is not going to be a funny movie. And just like have fun with it.
Yep.
Have fun doing action. Have fun making me scared.
That alteration to me sounds like you're keeping roughly 8% of the movie.
I think I'm keeping 80% of the movie. I think I'm ditching some comedy.
Oh, okay.
And I'm ditching some of the comedy. I'm replacing it with like more Penny or more action. Mm-hmm. And then I'm rescoring it because there's not much score.
Well, there's no score. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm taking out the sleepy songs.
Yeah. I remake this as Penny's movie. Like, there's a good plot in here, but it's Penny's, and you get to see a third of Penny's plot.
Yeah.
But it's concurrent with the timeline of the movie. So why aren't you just seeing the whole, like, the mice are not interesting. You could make the mice more interesting, but I don't care. Like, Penny's already interesting. Let's focus on that. She has a backstory of the orphanage. You don't see the scene where, like, Medusa and Snopes entice her. Like, you don't know she's running away, really, until she says running away didn't work out so well. Mm-hmm. You kind of have maybe, like, some implicit stuff. Anyway, just follow Penny. Maybe the rescuers are, like, a B character in it.
Can I pitch a way to bring those
Sure.
together? So we've got a cat in the orphanage.
Yes, we do.
Who also I really enjoy. I just really enjoy Penny and this cat.
Yeah.
Like holding a cat the way a 4-year-old holds a cat. Hilarious to me. But like maybe the rescuers live in that orphanage and are friends with Penny, and then one day she is not there.
Yeah.
And that's how they go on this adventure, but that's also how we keep Penny as like a main character in this movie.
It's like Timon and Pumbaa going on an adventure to save Simba. Like, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so I just kind of realign the perspective. Mm-hmm. It could be the same story, but you focus it on Penny and it's going to be a lot better.
That's true. That's correct.
Secret of NIMH.
Oof.
Re-release. Special edition. The Road in the Vault.
Re-release. Mm-hmm. This movie did not get its due credit. After watching it, I said this might be my favorite Don Bluth movie. Mm-hmm. And it might be my favorite one. Like, Anastasia's a strong contender, but I would say
Anastasia is a different universe of Don Bluth.
It does not feel like the same company at all.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, this might be my favorite Don Bluth movie. I think people need to see it and see it in its original form. I did not like the comedy. Mm-hmm. Maybe it works better for other people. Maybe Dom DeLuise playing a character that is not drawn like Dom DeLuise is great for other people. I think he works really well as Tiger in American Tail.
Well, so I would argue that character is drawn Dom DeLuise and this other one isn't, so it's weird to hear him. Like, Dom DeLuise is not long.
Right.
In any way, but this character is long. Like, the cat is, like, fat and stout.
You're agreeing with me.
Okay,
yes.
Great.
He is playing a character that doesn't look like him and isn't drawn to emote like him.
Got it.
And it kind of doesn't make sense.
I do agree with that.
As Tiger in American Tail, that character is like drawn to be rolly, like not just fat.
Yeah.
But like he laughs and he rolls and he laughs out of control. And Dom DeLuise does those things where he like laughs uncontrollably. Jeremy is not made for that. Tiger is made for that. So anyway, that aside, I say release this as it is. I want people to see this movie.
Yeah. I think I special edition with the fixes we've already talked about. I do think the her distracting Jeremy is funny. So you cut her initial scene with Jeremy and in a quarter, you use 25% of it.
It's very long.
And then you add in a few lines about my husband made all the brave choices.
Yeah.
I'm not that mouse. And then then the rest is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all I do.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
we are halfway done with Mouse Month.
we're halfway done with Mouse Month. Wait, is this a 3-paycheck month or is this a normal month?
This is it.
How many Mondays are there in August?
There are only 2 fortnights. Yeah. So
Okay,
you'll have to tune in next time to see what Mouse Month installations there are. Hint, they've both been mentioned. Both movies have been mentioned in this podcast. So, go back and listen again. But if you don't want to listen again, that's okay. You can just go to our social media instead. We're not going to give hints there, but also you should just go to our social media.
Yeah.
Dick, we're on Twitter,
Cellmates Podcast.
Facebook,
Cellmates Podcast.
email,
Cellmatespodcast@gmail.com.
and internet.
Cellmatespodcast.com.
That's correct.
And you can find us on the various pod catchers. Is that what they're called?
Yeah,
Your
listening
podcast
apps.
listening apps.
Yeah.
If you're not the downloading type, we're also on YouTube. Just search for Cellmates
Search for
Podcast.
us, yeah.
You can
It's not a
find
channel.
it. It's not too tricky to find
So
yet.
if you have guesses of what the 2 other Mouse Month movies are, please let us know, and we'll give some kind of on-air non-prize for correct guesses.
And if you have suggestions for some movies that you'd like to see paired up, whether it's one pair of movies or you want to give us a list of 20,
Thank you, Rachel.
We love seeing these pairs. It's super fun to see what other people put together as here are 2 movies that are connected. Wait, how are this? Ooh, I get it.
But also, here's a movie. And we say, what?
We
The Care Bears in Wonderland.
Care Bears in Wonderland and the Winnie the Pooh movie.
Yeah, the new one.
Which wasn't even on our radar, I don't think. And then it's one of my favorite movies I've watched this year. So, please give us all the suggestions.
You have that power.
And, of course, hashtag do all the Land Before Time movies.
Hashtag Mouse Month. Woo!
Ooh. All right. For Cellmates Podcast, I've been Dick Ward.
I'm Kate Phillips.
Rats off to you.
Squeak.
It's like a fog has lifted. What's that from? It's like some ice has melted. Anyway.
And it's like the ice has melted.
What's that from?
And at last I see
That's
the juice.
it.
And it's fuchsia, dark and sweet.
Wait, I can't go that high.
Mm-hmm.